Good morning. Good morning. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I want to talk about before I get into the last little bit of your study guide. Hopefully, the feedback that I gave everyone on their conservatism DBQ helped when you did your next one. I haven't been able to look at those like I had wanted to. Time has been weird, but I will be looking at those right after we're done with this, and I'll give you some feedback on that as well. I'll also post another one. Totally optional. You absolutely don't have to do this other one. You can ignore it. You could look at the documents. You could plan it as practice. If you want to write it and send it to me, as long as you do it, today, then I'll be able to give you some feedback. Also, I will go live tomorrow morning. I thought about maybe going live tonight to answer any last minute questions, but I have some things I've got to do. So I will go live tomorrow morning at we could still do 10. We'll keep it at 10 since your test isn't still till 2. That's still a lot of time. So tomorrow morning at 10 I'll be live, and I'll answer any last minute questions, and if any new information comes out, I'll talk about that. As you know, I told you yesterday the AP Euro exam was yesterday, and so some information has been coming out about questions and things like that. And we already know, based off AP Gov and AP Human Geo that I talked about before, that there are multiple questions and multiple versions of the test. And the way that it was reading before was that it, the questions maybe had subtle differences. More information has come out, and what we're realizing is that there are some questions with subtle differences, and then there are some questions that are not. And yesterday on the AP Euro exam, they had questions from 4 different periods in AP Euro, 4 different units. They had questions on the Reformation, they had questions on Napoleon. And then even within those questions, they had different document sets for various questions, and then they had different wording for questions with the same document set. So I talked to one AP Euro teacher who in her class of 20 students had 4 very different questions given across the board. So some of you could get a question on Jackson, and some of you could get a question on the New Deal. And there's just no way to, it's not like you get to pick. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because you have to make peace with the thought that someone will get a question that to you is easier than the question that you might get. So like there were on the AP Year exam, from what I was reading from students, overwhelmingly the ones who got in the Napoleon question did not feel confident about their answers. Everyone who wrote about the Reformation or people who wrote about the French Revolution, they typically seemed like they thought that they did well, but the students who had the Napoleon question did not feel confident. And it really just depends. Like some of you remember some things better than others. Like your strong area might be the Gilded Age. Someone else's strong area might be Jackson. Someone else's strong area might be, like I said, the New Deal or World War I or any of these other things. And it really just depends. And you just have to make peace with if you think your question's hard and then you hear from your friend and they got a totally different question that you think is so easy and you're like, wow, I got screwed. That's the name of the game. And yes, that totally blows, but there's really nothing that anybody can do about it. That being said, if you talk to someone and they had the same question as you, they might not have had the same documents as you. So make sure that that's another one of the reasons why there's no point in talking to anyone until you're completely done with your exam. And some other things I was saying yesterday is make sure that if you're typing your response in a Google Doc, it is a Google Doc that only you have access to. Make sure it's not a Google Doc that's shared with anyone else. Also make sure that all your other windows are closed. Make sure the only window you have open is your exam, maybe a Google tab if you're doing some quick fact checking, and then if you're typing in a Google Doc or a Word doc or whatever, you can do it in that. That's really all I would have open. And also, if it's possible, talk to everybody in your house ahead of time. I like Jackson. Well, It could very well be on Jackson. Who knows? But don't say move dim natives. Ew. But regardless, talk to everyone in your house and make sure they know that you have to do this test, that you have to log on at really, you should be logging on at like, Caleb, don't even start with, don't even, make sure you log on. It says 30 minutes ahead of time. If I was you, I would log on like 45 minutes ahead of time. I can't with you, Caleb. And because you've got to answer those questions and you want to make sure you don't have any issues logging on. Talk to the people in your house and do your best to ask them to not be on the internet during that time. Even if the internet at your house is normally fine, you don't want anything potentially interrupting your bandwidth or slowing you down, stopping you from being able to access the questions, anything like that. Amber, that's honestly what I would do. I'm very paranoid about time and stuff. I would truly at 1 o'clock, I would be logging on, but you don't have to do that. They just said that they recommended that you log on 30 minutes ahead of time because that's about how long it'll take you to do all those extra questions. Also, the seniors tested yesterday. The AP Lit exam was yesterday. The ones that I talked to felt pretty good about it, which isn't good. So good job, seniors. Let's keep that going. And I asked what the like before the exam questions and stuff were. And so they told me that they had to, answer some questions and then they had to like retype this like 500 word thing. That's the thing that's going to be recording your keystrokes and stuff. So there's that. So you're gonna have to have some time before the test actually begins at 2 to do all that stuff because that's not factored into the time that begins at 2. Also, as far as when I told you I want you to contact me when you're done with your test, but I need you to wait 50 minutes, 50 minutes after you're done with your test. And that is because, normally students and teachers aren't allowed to discuss test materials until the free response questions have been released by College Board, which usually takes a couple of weeks. But obviously, that's different this year. They want everyone to wait 50 minutes because students who have extended time, theirs is an extra 50 minutes. So 50 minutes after you are done with your test. So, and if you start at 2, by 2:50, you're going to be done. So really by like 3:30, 3:45, then you can text me, call me, email me, do whatever, to tell me about your test and how you felt about it, because they just want to make sure that by the time you tell me anything about the exam, that all students are done testing. And so make sure you're not posting anything on social media, because I promise you College Board is going to have they do it every year, and this year it's going to be more intense than ever. They are going to have no, you cannot get extra time, girl. They're going to have a team of people whose sole job is to find people who are posting anything about the exam questions before that time is allowed and voiding your exam scores. So I wouldn't even like a meme. I wouldn't retweet anything, nothing until those 50 minutes are up. And then you're safe. Then you can say whatever, because they know that information is going to get out. So that's fine. But don't, as soon as you're done with your test, get on Twitter, search hashtag APUS, and then start retweeting all these things that talk about whatever the question is, because they're going to go through whoever retweets it and they're going to find you and they're going to void your scores. So don't do that. You're already, you've done all this work. Well, I heard it by retweeting a meme. Not worth it. Like I said, it depends on how funny the meme is. Okay, let me see if there's anything else I wanted to say based off of what AP Euro said. Nothing off the top of my head. There are a few things I want to mention about your DBQs, because a couple of you, overwhelmingly, everyone did like average to good on the Vietnam DBQ. So could we just click the e-ticket? Yep, that's what I've been told. Yep. But if you need double checking on that, you can always just text a senior who already took their exam. Text somebody or find somebody on Snapchat who's already taken their exam, and they can probably tell you. But yeah, you just click on the e-ticket thing. And that's, I said last night, make sure that you've gotten your e-ticket. There was one senior that I spoke to who missed their exam because they did not get their e-ticket and they didn't pay attention to all of the information that staff and Ms. Horton and the College Board have been sending out about how you should have already gotten your e-ticket and you should be able to click on that to take you to your thing. So when it was time for this person to log on, they didn't have their actual exam link. And so they couldn't do it. So I've said it before. Ms. Horton contacted all of you to make sure that you were getting College Board's emails. I sent out reminders to make sure that you were getting College Board's emails. If you have not already gotten your ticket, there is a problem. So if that is the case, you have got to talk to Ms. Horton immediately, so they can get that. If something was to happen like that to you, then you can always take it on the makeup exam day. But why put this off any longer? Aren't you just ready to get it over with? I know I'm ready for you to get it over with. As for the DBQs, like I said, people typically did like average to very well on their Vietnam DBQ. And on the conservatism DBQ, it was more like average to not very well. And I know that's because that one was a harder question. Several people said the documents they found were a little more confusing than the Vietnam one. And some of that might just have to do with the fact that, a political question like that is just more difficult because the content's less interesting to most students than like a war and talking about like social changes. Like that's just something that people are generally more interested in. And fact, whatever you like is going to be easier to you. So if out of all the content we've studied this semester, Reconstruction was the most interesting to you, then if you got a question on that, that would be easier to you than a question that even like the Civil Rights Movement that we might have spent more time on, if that wasn't as something that you enjoyed as much. So that's why I was saying, make peace with whatever question you get, whatever you get is whatever you get. I know that a lot of you, especially those of you who took civil liberties, would probably prefer a question like the one Zaria is suggesting. And that's possible. They have done a DBQ about like antebellum stuff before, but it was on the old DBQ system. So it was like, I don't know, 6 or more years ago. And also last year, one of the LEQs was on the causes of the Civil War. So they could recycle that. They could like not even get near it. There's literally no telling anything is possible. So a few things I want to mention about reasons not to freak out. Okay. Number one, you have a home field advantage here. Okay. You're going to be in the comfort of your own home, and that automatically is going to take some of the stress out of this. Like normally when you take one of these tests, you're like in this room with everyone, it's silent. You see the giant clock ticking ahead of you. Ms. Horton's just like staring at you, number 2 pencil. And you're already, by the time you get to the DBQ, you're already exhausted because you've already done like all these multiple choice questions and you've written 3 SAQs and there's a lot of stress. But tomorrow you can sit in your bed and do it, or sit on the couch, like go wherever is best for you. You get to be in charge of your own environment. So that's something that's definitely going to help. Another thing is if you don't pass this exam, it does not matter. I've said that a million times. I'm going to say it again. Of course you want to pass. I want you to pass. I think you're capable of passing. But if something happens and you don't, it is what it is. Like if you get a question tomorrow and you're like, what is this? Do your best, man. That's all I can ask. Just try. Third, something that I want to mention about, and something that I talked to a couple of, I'm stressed because my college credit is counting on a DBQ. I can't even write. You did well on your Vietnam one, so chill out. But what was I just about to say? Oh, when I was counting points yesterday on rubrics and stuff, I was thinking, what should be the game plan for like if you pulled this DBQ up and you're like, what is this? Like, what if you got like a conservatism like DBQ? You wouldn't get that because that one was the DBQ like 2 or 3 years ago. But what if you did? When we'll be able to see our women one. Right after this, I'm going to start grading this. So, what I think, and I told you several of you, your essays are difficult and don't connect back to your thesis when you don't plan, period. So you need to make sure that you take 7 or so minutes to plan. The next thing I would do to try to make as good of a situation as you can out of those 5 documents, realistically, using all 5 documents or 4 of the 5 documents gets you 2 out of 10 points. You could get a 9 out of 10 in theory on this test if you only use 2 or 3 documents. So keep that in mind. If you look at this, you're very crunched for time and you just decide, I can only make 2 or 3 of these work. I only understand 2 or 3 of these, then pick 2 or 3 and do that. That's okay. You write whatever version of this you need to get as many points as possible. That being said, if you only so you do 2 documents, you get 1 point there. Context thesis, do 2 points for outside evidence. That's something that you can Google. Don't Google whole questions, but Google. I mean, you guys know how to Google. At least I hope you do. You don't want to Google whole questions because you don't want College Board thinking that you're cheating, because they probably will be monitoring everyone's internet activity while this is going on. That is probably one of the security tactics or whatever. But and then so aside from those 5 points, you've also got magic point. I mean, come on. You could get a really good plus your other document points. Like, did you hear about the Snapchat thing? Yeah, that wasn't real. Or wait, are you talking about the TikTok thing? I don't know. I saw a thing on TikTok that was a lie. So I don't know about the Snapchat thing, but whatever it is, if it's about like people using Snapchat, I'm telling you, 99% of the stuff you're seeing about College Board, like hacking people's phones and stuff, is not real. But they will know if you cheat, so don't even try. They were like blocking people from posting on their stories or something. Yeah, that's not true either. Nope. Not real. That being said, write a DBQ and send it to you. No, because 1, I sent you a video last night or this morning. I'm having a difficult time remembering which, but of a teacher who sat down and wrote an AP World DBQ. And even though the content's different, the skills are the same, so you can watch him do it. 2, Tom Ritchie, our AP guru, is going to go live at 1:00, and he's going to be going over some stuff on his YouTube channel. I think he's talking about reconstruction, but he's also going to write a DBQ. Watch him do it. The way he explains it might be better for you. So, I mean, I'm not the end all be all of AP knowledge. So definitely look for whatever resources that you have available. I also upload, he's not your dad. Yeah, that's also true. If they're monitoring internet traffic without disclosing it, isn't that invasion of privacy? No, because when you agree to take the test and you check all of the things like, I agree to the terms and conditions, and when you register for the exam, you agree to obey all College Board's rules. And if that's the rule, that's the rule. Everything's optional at the end of the day. Also, there was one more thing I was going to say about prepping for the exam. So Tom Ritchie's going to go live at 1. Oh, and I uploaded student samples for the conservatism DBQ. So if you really struggled on that one, I definitely suggest the first sample. There are 3 student samples. At the very last page, or one of the last pages, tells you like what each of them scored, but the first student sample is always the one that got it all right. So take a look at that. Look at how they wrote their, if you didn't get context, take a look at how they wrote their context. If you can't read the handwriting, you need to get over and power through, because honestly, it wasn't even that hard. They intentionally picked things that are not that hard to read. So you didn't even really try. You probably read one sentence and thought, how do you think I feel reading your handwriting? Come on. So you can actually look at that if you want to. But like I said, 1:00, I'll send out the link when he goes live, but he is honestly really good at explaining stuff. So I really do recommend, he has a great passing rate for his kids. People pay him a lot of money to come do AP review sessions at their schools during normal years. So I highly suggest tuning into his live stream at 1. Or I'm sure it will stay up. So later, if you're not available at 1, go back and watch it, because just hearing someone else talk through it is always beneficial. You tried me. My handwriting is okay. Yeah, we all know. So like I said, don't freak out when you get in there. Do what you can. You can do 2 pieces of outside evidence. That's 2 points right there. Context and thesis. Context is just what was going on leading up to this. Give us the intro. Your thesis is the root of the whole thing. All it is answering the question. One thing I want to mention about making sure that you fully get your document points and fully get your your outside evidence points is some of you were explaining something really well, but you were not actually connecting it to your thesis. You were explaining it, but then you weren't really showing us how it supports your thesis. So honestly, all you have to do is say, like, if your thesis is that that a new conservatism rose due to rise in fundamentalism. Okay, if that's part of your thesis and you're using moral majority, Jerry Falwell, to show us how that's true. If you summarize Listen America and you say sort of like what's going on, then do one sentence for each of those things, connecting back to the thesis. Just do one sentence saying, this moral majority, Jerry Falwell, used his influence to push religious beliefs and a return to traditional ideas, and that you know, what are the theses? Oh, sorry, people would keep talking to me and it's making me lose my train of thought. What was the thesis I just came up with? That's what caused a new rise in conservatism. Okay, so that's when you say, you can honestly restate your thesis. You write one of those sentences, have sort of like a plan for it, like this, and this is the reason, or shows us that, and then thesis again. Honestly, that's even fine. It's juvenile and not a great way to write, but if that's what you got to do to make sure you get those points, who freaking cares? It doesn't have to be the most flowery, beautiful, wonderful essay of all time. Remember that there's no points to lose for that. There's no points to lose for grammar. There's no points to lose for spelling. If you're typing away and you see a whole bunch of spelling errors, don't worry about trying to fix them. If you have time at the end and you want to fix them, fine. I saw a tweet a girl put up earlier where she was reading her DBQ after she submitted it off of her Google Doc, and she realized that she had wrote the French Revolution instead of the French Revolution. That's kind of funny, but it doesn't matter if you have any of those errors because there's literally no points lost for it. So all you can do is throw it out there as best as you can. And I've written this to several of you. The easier you make it on the reader, the more likely it is that you're gonna get your point. And dent your paragraphs. Make sure you have actual paragraphs. There's no technical rules against saying opening, body 1, body 2, or saying thesis. There's no rules saying that you cannot do that. When time is up, does it automatically submit it? No, if you don't submit it, nothing gets submitted and you don't have an exam. So you have to actually submit it yourself. So when time is up, it will cut off. You will lose access to it. So you have to begin the submission upload before time is up. I know, wow, that's very scary as well. You would think that it would just be like, we sent it, we saved it, but no, you have to do it yourself. So make sure that you do. Our College Board is playing us. We technically only get 40 minutes. No, the 5-minute submission process is not included in your 45 minutes. So you technically get 50 minutes. I have heard, at first I thought that you don't get to write during those 50 minutes, that you have to be uploading. And then I heard from someone else that you can. I don't know which is true. So plan on not taking, more than 45 minutes. All right. I'm going to breeze through period 8 and 9 here, since this is just stuff that you would only need for context or magic point things. I'm glad I can type this instead of writing. I actually have a chance to finish it now. Exactly. See, look at the bright side, because some of you write slower. Being able to type it honestly might really help you. Okay. Also, make sure that you tell everyone in your house not to bother you, like during look at me trying to like do this thing and people keep coming to tell me stuff. And yesterday I keep getting all these freaking text messages. I can't concentrate. Make sure that you are not going to be distracted by anything and lose any train of thought. If it isn't on the College Board thing, they can't lock you out at 45 minutes. So you can take 50 minutes. I understand what you're trying to say. Like if you're typing it in a Google Doc, they can't lock you out, but you're going to have your College Board, you're going to have that open. So like at the end of your time, then it might say like, okay, now you need to submit, like the writing portion is closed, and press the submission button. But we don't know. So don't make any of those. And honestly, like, I'm not saying it's smart, but you could. I wouldn't even, it's not even worth it. What are you going to crank out in 60 seconds? Like one more sentence? Yes, that would be great. One more sentence, but do you want to risk one more sentence and possibly lose your entire exam, or just submit what you got done in 45 minutes. That's what I would do. So remember what I said about you only use 2 or 3 if that's what you really need to do. Get your outside evidence in there. You guys know how to do context at this point. I think some of you really overthought context in the last one, but your context for the Vietnam one was honestly great. And that's one of the things that'll really help you if you've got your notes there in front of you. If you get a question about Jackson and you're like, what the crap happened before Jackson? Flip to your notes, or flip to your study guide, find Jackson, and then look before Jackson. And then you'll be like, oh, yes, era of good feelings, all of this other stuff, Industrial Revolution is beginning, other things are going on. And then you'll know what to write. So that's definitely something that's going to help you to make sure you have all of your little cheat sheets and everything ready. All right, so I'm just going to breeze through this. I'm not going to go into a lot of details about anything because, like I said, this is just context and magic point stuff. And honestly, this stuff we covered a lot more recently, so it shouldn't be stop, Caleb. I was writing it like it was a rhetorical analysis thing. AP like, I know that's something that can be confusing. Like last year, half the class wrote their synthesis essay on their final exam for AP Lang like a DBQ, which is wrong because in a DBQ you're supposed to use all the documents, and in a synthesis essay you're only supposed to use a few. So there were definitely some people who struggled with that last year. So try to keep your writing skills separate in your brain. I know that is tough. Okay, so following aspects of U.S. foreign policy during the Cold War: containment, contain communism. Truman Doctrine will help anybody defend themselves from communism. Marshall Plan, come get money to defend yourself from communism. Brinkmanship, we'll go to war with anyone to defend anyone from communism. Domino theory, one country follows the communism and the ones around it follow like communism. That's what we thought was going to happen in Vietnam. It wasn't true, but that's what we thought. Mutually assured destruction, you blow up Russia, they're going to blow you up. You guarantee your own destruction if you use nuclear weapons. What was the purpose of the House Un-American Activities Committee? To root out potential communists in the U.S. government. What happened to Julius and Ethel Rosenberg? They were executed because they were accused of selling American secrets about nuclear weapons testing to the Soviet Union, which was espionage. But they might not have done it. We're not entirely sure. McCarthyism is that whole moment of paranoia and fear that the person next to you could be a communist, or that you could be accused of communism. So McCarthyism is kind of like that witch hunt. Korean War as a hot spot. Obviously, it's pretty similar to the Vietnam War, and several of you made that connection on your Vietnam DBQ. Like in the context part, you were talking about hotspot. A lot of you wrote about hotspots, and that was a great, segue into the moment. That was a great idea for context. That's probably exactly what I would have done is, we're in this period of Cold War. There are several hotspots. Mention a few. You don't have to go into a lot of detail. Remember to always include, you cannot get points if there are not specific facts in there. You got to give me a name, a place, an event, something. Don't just say, since Jamestown was founded in 1607, and think that that's going to count as your name and your date. And you can just roll on from there and talk about whatever you want to. It needs to make sure that you need to make sure it's relevant to what you're talking about. Same for magic point. Some people I saw attempted a magic point, and then what they wrote was very vague. And they didn't give any specific factual information. SFI, if you don't have that, you're not getting the point. Because you remember, this is a show what you know situation. You just have to show the reader that you know enough material right now to earn a college credit. If you can show them that, then you will be fine. So Korean War, North invades South. America and the rest of the Western countries get in to help, and they reestablish the border. First Berlin crisis, that's the one with the blockade where we have to do the airlift. Bay of Pigs is when we try to help them invade Cuba, and it's just a fail, and all those guys get killed. Cuban Missile Crisis, closest we ever get to nuclear war with Russia, but it ended up calming down. Second Berlin crisis, that's one where they what's the word I'm looking for? Build the Berlin Wall. Was that because we tried to introduce new currency, right? The blockade, yes. If that's what you're talking about, yes, because we tried to introduce a new currency. 3 post-war effects of the automobile: suburbs, white flight, the growth of franchises, building the interstate rail or the interstate railroad, the interstate highway system. How does mass media reflect new ideas about American culture in the 1950s? Nuclear family, television shows, all of that stuff. The beatniks were the people who were going against like the grain of society, and being critical of that like conformist cultures, like Betty Friedan criticizing how women were expected to conform, David Reisman talking about being the lonely crowd, being one of many people like them. How did American industry and economics change in the post-war period? We went from a manufacturing-based job sector to a service-based job sector in terms of economics. What was the name of Kennedy's domestic agenda? The New Frontier, not the Final Frontier, that's space. Speaking of space, the cause of the space race would be Russia's launch of the Sputnik 1. Effects would be our creation of NASA, as well as the National Defense Education Act, where we invested like $1 billion into science and other STEM education in public schools. Major Warren Court rulings, Brown v. Board, and desegregation of public schools. Miranda v. Arizona gave us Miranda rights. Engel v. Vitale said they couldn't force you to pray in schools. Griswold v. Connecticut gave all single women equal access to birth control. And Tinker v. Des Moines protected freedom of speech, protected peaceful freedom of speech in the public school setting. What was the Great Society? That was Johnson's domestic agenda. What was the most important facet of the Great Society? The war on poverty. Remember that these are two different things. Don't even start, Zaria. 3 programs that were part of these initiatives. Head Start is one, Medicare, Medicaid. Those are all examples of war on poverty